So to start with, my name's Larses. I hope I come through good with the microphone and all. I'm actually a consultant with Taipuva, but I'm working quite a lot at Scania at the moment, so I will be presenting their way or their approach to reusing. It will be a bit different from the other presentations, but still. My background is that I actually started out at Scania some 20 years ago, working there as a systems engineer, system architect, and doing a PhD within automotive embedded systems. So you could say that I'm back to the scene of the crime now. I'm working with this again after a few years at other companies like FLIR Systems and De Laval, and now working with Taipuva. So that said, the people behind what I'm about to present, there's a lot of people who are involved in working with the information structures at Scania. I got help from the information architect Jonas Westman to prepare this presentation, but I will be delivering it. Okay. So that said, I think I need to share the screen as well, right? So you got the screen okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So the title here is the concept for continuous development of modular products. So we'll see what that is about. I think Scania as a company, since we're in the Nordic countries now, it's a fairly well-known company. Mainly known for the trucks and buses, I guess, but also for the industrial and marine engines, the power solutions, and of course the services around that as well. And at Scania, Polarion is used for a lot of purposes. So it's issue tracking around test assignments, it's safety plans, technical regulations, RFQs, requirements, to name a few. And the focus of this presentation is on the information structure for the requirements management, the RMS system, which is the formal requirements at Scania. There are also other requirements that are managed, but this is like the more formal part. And this formality is needed or intended to be compliant with the standard ISO 26262, which is well known in the automotive industry, and maybe some of you are aware of it as well. It's about functional safety. So, but before going into the information structures here and how Polarion is applied, you need two pieces of background here. So first of all, some of you, or maybe many of you, know that Scania is a bit famous for their modular system. So it is one of the main reasons behind the Scania success, that they have a true model system. So it's just one product that you configure. So you use the same pieces and parts regardless of if it's going into a truck or a bus or an engine. So the Lego pieces that Khaled was talking about is really fully used at Scania. And this modular system, the other piece of background that you would need is in the Scania way of working. So this is like a picture that has been around for a long time at Scania. I think the modular system started out in the 80s, and this is also a very old picture that is explaining how Scania is working. And the key thing that I would like to point to here is this top of the house, the roof of the house, which says continuous improvements. So Scania is working with continuous improvement in many ways, improving the processes, improving things, but also within product development. this means that also the product is improved continuously in small steps. So each of the modules of the product are improved more or less independently of the other modules. And at the same time, the entire product is also improved with putting new requirements on functionality and higher levels. So this is going on both on the completed product and also in the smaller parts. So what does that mean? What does that imply? Well, to repeat this in some different words, there are no product lines at Scania. I think both Khaled and Veli-Pekka talked about different products going to different customers and keeping those specified. That doesn't really happen at Scania. When it happens, it is actually on the individual level. So there's only one big product at Scania that is available, and then you choose your individual product configuration for it. So you pick up your product variant, and you define that by using something called function codes, which is more or less a DNA code. So you put this DNA code into the Scania module system, and out comes a bus or a truck or an engine, whatever. But it's not only the DNA that is needed. Of course, this changes all the time. It's continuously evolving. So that also means that you need to keep good track of your change management. And that validity in time is managed by some change orders, ECOs. So you don't, the DNA string and a timestamp, those two together actually defines what product you will get in your hand. And the same DNA string on Monday might be something completely different on Friday, depending on what has happened in the ECOs. So it's these two things that needs to be managed all the time. And since the evolution goes both top down when new functionality is introduced, or bigger things are coming into the product or the trucks. But at the same time, it's also done bottom up. So components are exchanged, pieces of the software are improved. So the design flow goes in both directions, but it's still only in this single product. So you need to be able to connect specifications in a very fluent way, going both up and down in the design flow. I'll get back to this a bit, but so this is the technical background or the way Scania needs to be working. And how is the information model set up then in the requirements management system? I mentioned this ISO 262 that Scania needs to comply with. Since it's a safety standard, the top layer you see here is safety goals. So you need to analyze the world around you and get to these safety goals and make sure that all the requirements, that the safety goals are covered by requirements and managed in the truck or in the product. Internally, there are three system layers. I think we saw more layers at Concilium, but there's been some talk here about the mechanical and software, and what we're looking at now is actually the requirement structure focusing on the embedded systems. So these layers, the user function, the functional elements, and the components, which would be the three system layers here, are actually defined for the embedded systems. So there is some limitations here. It's not a completely generic model, but it still connects down to hardware. So of course the embedded system has controllers, ECUs that needs to be specified, and sensors and actuators as well. So the traceability here goes from the safety goals down through the user functions, the functionality. So one example could be a cruise control functionality here. And you break down this cruise control functionality into a number of functional elements that are connected. So one element could be a measure speed element, and then you have some control algorithm doing something, and then you need to control the engine to get your cruise control functionality. And below that you have both software and hardware components. So there, somewhere in one control unit, there will be a software running executing this control algorithm that is available here. So that is like the basic information structure here. And I'm talking about these system layers, but what you should actually be paying attention to in this picture is what is happening in between these layers. And you see that you have some gray items here that are called breakdown specifications. So the different system layers are not connected immediately, but through these breakdown nodes. And there are a number of points around that. So if we take the cruise control example again, we have that as a user function here, and you want to break that down into a number of elements like measuring the speed and having a control algorithm. So then you put in a work item of type breakdown in the breakdown specification. So the dotted lines here are live docs, and the blocks here are, of course, work items. And by doing this in a separate specification, that means that it allows actually capturing the design rationale. If you're familiar with the systems engineering sandwich, you know that you have a requirements layer, and then you have a design layer, and then you go back to writing requirements for the items you have designed. And then you do another breakdown in architecture going down into the details, very much like Khaled explained. And when doing this at Scania, this is done in these breakdown specifications. So it actually captures the design decisions, and it allows, well, there's something called ASIL decomposition. So it's the safety integrity level. So if you have safety critical requirement here, you need to manage that safety criticality and pass down this safety integrity level down to lower layer requirements. So that's one mechanism that you need to do and can do through the breakdown specification, explaining how you do that. And by separating out this design, it also allows you to review this breakdown separate from the requirements themselves. And that is also a requirement in the ISO standard, to actually review the breakdown. So that is one benefit here, that by having this separated, you are actually also managing and reviewing the design. Another thing here, and now I need to go back to like a more classic way of connecting requirements. So if you have the stakeholder requirements, system requirements, and subsystem requirement, 3 system levels here. Typically, if you see, say that you're working on the system requirement level, and there is a change in the stakeholder requirements, then that change would mean that this link coming from the system requirement pointing to the stakeholder requirement is actually a suspect link. And working on the system requirement level, you will need to take action on that, and okay, the stakeholder requirement has changed. Do I need to change my system requirement as well? So, and the other thing is that if you're changing your system requirement, then that's fine. Then you can change the link and you can refine your link up to the stakeholder requirement, and that would be independent. So the stakeholder requirements don't need to care about what is actually happening in the system requirements below. And so each system level will hide the lower level systems, the lower system levels. And so you don't have to care about what is happening down the chain. But if you're far down the chain and you see changes coming, you need to manage those in a proper way. And if you have a modular system like you have at Scania, and you have your function element requirements or your components down there that are supporting extreme variety of variants and a number of functionalities and all that, then you will be connected to very many stakeholder requirements upwards. So if you need to manage all those dependencies, the only thing you would do would be looking into what is happening everywhere in all our system with their product. That is a full-time job. So, and that full-time job, if you're working like this, it can be a bit hard to do it. So if you look in this Scania picture instead, the idea is to move that full-time job to look into how the breakdown and linkage is done, is placed on the breakdown specification instead. If you look at the link directions here, you see that the link directions go out from the breakdown node here and out to the requirements, both the higher level requirements using the refines link. So there's one link role here, and then you have a different link role here, the refined by. That means that this is lower level requirements. So by having these different link roles, you know what is up and down in your system levels. But since the links are going out from the breakdown specification, you can do independent changes both in your lower level specifications and in your upper level specifications, and then you can just manage and analyze that in the breakdown specification. So it sort of modularizes the work for everyone, so they can work in their part of the system, and then someone needs to take care of integrating that using these breakdown specifications. So that is one key mechanism. And the other mechanism that I will talk about is assumptions. So again, looking into one functional element specification here, like the control algorithm. Say that in your cruise control you have you are doing something, and one thing that you need is actually the measured speed of the vehicle. What you can do in the Scania setup is then to add an assumption in your specification and say that I assume that the measured speed will be available, and maybe also in the format. So depending on what type of specification it is, it could be just saying that the vehicle speed should be available, or even going into the signals. So saying that I'm expecting vehicle speed to come to my function in this CAN signal on this format, and with this intervals or this frequency. So you can put all like interface specifications as assumptions, so that also allows you to work independently of the world around you. So you specify completely what your module is going to do, including what you assume the world around you to do. So it could be communication, but maybe also that you expect some things to exist. It could be mechanical things or whatever. So allowing this for you to work independently sounds good, but of course you also need then to verify, when you're verifying your functionality, you also need to make sure that your assumptions are verified. So if you assume that the signal, the measured speed will come in a CAN signal, you will also need to have a test case. So there will be an interface specification somewhere that can connect to this assumption. So you will need to make sure that everything that this assumption is dependent on is actually tested and verified. So to make sure that your function is working, you need to complete that as well. But you can do a review and approval of this functionality in this document, independent of needing to update or approve the interface specification or other specifications. So it's sort of containing the approvals and making the work independent to the extent possible. So that's sort of it. So comparing to what Veli-Pekka and Caleb presented, where you're actually reusing from some kind of repository or base project, there's no such reuse at Scania. It's continuous work in all specifications, because there is only one product, and that product is live all the time. But you need to manage the validity of specifications using these DNA codes, and also having change management on that. And one additional thing to mention here is that is fairly, it's not easy, but you can at least say if a certain function will exist in one product or the other. Will I choose cruise control to be a part of my truck or not? But at one point in time it is available, and then at another point in time it's not available. So that is fairly okay. But sometimes when you change the implementation at the lower level, so say that you change the measure speed sensor, you're improving the speed sensor. That means that this breakdown will point to a different requirement down here. So you will also need to manage the configurations and the variability in the breakdown nodes. And this concept allows for that. So you can think about your specific function and how that works, but the complexity in these breakdowns is managed in a separate object. And then we have the assumptions, as I mentioned. These two mechanisms together allows Scania to continuously work with improvement in small steps in all parts of the product in this modular structure. It adds on the complexity in these documents, but that you could see as the replacement or the alternative to having a base repository. Yeah, so I think that's more or less it.